manageable. If we get into the very lightning rod issue on what we're proposing is, yes, to share some of these costs with the local counties at 50-50. Now, whether that happens today with the hammer approach and we just pass this, I'm an optimist, but I'm not living in fantasy world either. That's not going to happen overnight. But we have set the groundwork and the framework here for several things to take place with that. Either adopt that provision, either adopt a phase-in provision for that, or we have to open up the formulas and re-examine how all this is based. Since our costs have doubled in 5 years, we can't consume a doubling of that in another 5 years. It's just unsustainable. Our proposal puts the university systems in Morgan at the fiscal year 2007 levels, level funds community colleges by the formula basis, and yes, we're reducing some of the Sellinger funding, and which are grants to in-state private universities. The major change in this, and I know that one of the letters that we have is an objection to this, is that we are carving out any institution that has more than $1 billion in its endowment fund. The fact is it applies to one, and they're the second highest university has $150 million in its endowment. But we are at a critical juncture in how we do that, and yet how we also preserve funding to some of our smaller non-public schools. There are certain government reforms we feel that can take place, including some administrative efficiencies, shifting some of the retirement health care costs to Medicare Type D. Why is that important, in my opinion? An individual who retires from the private sector would be faced with that as an option. It is a nice benefit that we provide, but we can't continue to sustain that. So the provision is there to make that change. And yes, increase employee retirement contributions. Transportation. There's an awful lot that can be addressed in transportation, and we propose to increase fare box recovery to 50%. It used to be that, but we never met it. Instead of demanding the organization, transportation organization, come up to the level that we set as a threshold, what do? We lowered the bar. And so the proposal here is to go back, raise the bar, and then say this is what has to take place. I'm okay with allowing the department itself to figure out how to do the fare box recovery and get all that. Reduce the WMATA subsidy back to where it used to be, where the state covered 75% of it instead of 100% of it. And we have also added a provision to increase some local aids to our local governments. Baltimore City would be the main beneficiary of that at 11% of the money. The balance of it would be shared elsewhere.
Pick up a little bit, Mr. Chairman. Let me just say some of the overall philosophy that went into this, and my colleague touched on this last week. What we're attempting to do when we set out to do this is do what we think that the citizens of Maryland are.
Senator Grange.
Yes, Senator Brinkley, you talked about the fare box recovery rate going back up to 50%.
Mm-hmm.
Right now it's set at 35%.
Right.
So we're not meeting that. I think they're only meeting like 30% on buses and rail and so forth. Are you saying in this bill you would want the department to find a way, whether it's state employees and others probably travel without any fees or fares, that they would have to come up with a plan how they're going to get to that 50%?
I think it's fair to trust the executives that we've hired in there to come up with a plan to do it. As you mentioned, the fact that some individuals ride the system for free, frankly, that didn't even arise in our discussions, so there's another item for the table discussions. What we were looking at and what the DLS, or what the fiscal note references, is that there has to be an equitable place for fares to be established. There has to be the mechanism within the department to allocate where the revenues come from, the expenses go to. But more importantly, maybe this is jumping forward. It says we might have to raise fares. Well, if we don't do something along these lines, we're going to have to raise taxes again. Somebody else is paying the freight. None of it's for free. And so there has to be a balance struck. in this arrangement, and we have to be forthcoming before that's going to happen.
Okay. Thank you.
To continue with what the basic framework that we approached it, is, as my colleague said last week, is the idea that we tried to approach this where the families in Maryland are doing across their kitchen tables, we're doing here, and that we have a time of high unemployment, high uncertainty, many incomes are not rising the way they used to, and so people are having to reflect those situations back into their own personal spending patterns and make reductions and cuts in things that they care about. And that's what we hope this reflects. Also said it, I think it is a starting